Hello everybody and welcome to Leicester, a city that has been Roman, Norman, Saxon, Viking and at one point lost a king in literally underneath a car park. Let's dive in. Now, when I first arrived here in Leicester, what I really felt first and foremost was the familial feel of the people on the street. It seemed to me that everybody was related. All I could hear was bro, fam, cuz. So it's lovely that this town has that wonderful family element. Not 10 minutes out of the train station, I was persuaded to, give of my money to the local residents. I was politely informed that the person over my right shoulder had been stabbed 38 times, the poor blighter, but obviously I parted with my money to them for the cause. Our friend Tom also had his car helped to become a convertible, which was something that he'd informed me that he was very excited about having. And even some of the other chaps who were in their digs had a visitor because, it's an open door policy here, as long as you're banging the door with your foot to get in. But yeah, Leicester really made you feel welcome just as you arrived. This lawless vibe that seems to be pervading UK towns is not solely linked just to Leicester. It's a vibe that's been all over the country, sadly. But that is not to say that Leicester's past was not interesting, fantastic, and full of history. The name Leicester, once again, comes from the Romans, who seem to have a multitude of names for fort. Their original part comes from the River Soar, which was once called the Ligora, and Castra, Roman fort. So it was Ligora Castra, which has eventually devolved into Leicester, fort on the river. Before the Romans, we had a bunch of Iron Age tribes called the Coriol Talvi, who, they were doing their best without plumbing and Wi-Fi. So after the Romans, we enter the dark ages of Leicester, less emo, more administration. So we had the Vikings, the Saxons, the Normans. They all came through to pillage and administrate and show that their way of doing things was the right way, until the next one came along and said that their way of doing things was the right way. When the Vikings were here, Leicester became one of the 5 areas of Danelaw that they had over the nation. So it was essentially a Viking franchise. The Normans, what were they good at? Building castles. What did they do? They built a castle. But it was around the time of the Normans that it became a huge market town, predominantly dealing in wool. Domesday Book of 1086 describes the place as populous and full of life. The Great Leicester Abbey was built, which showed the place as a great place of wealth and spiritual vitality, also where Cardinal Wolsey died in disgrace. But no story of Leicester is complete without old Richard III. So Richard III, who died at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485, was brought back to Leicester and buried at the Grey Friars Friary. Couldn't get any chips there in those days. And, he was promptly forgotten for 500 years. Cut to 2012, and his body was rediscovered underneath what was then the Grey Friars car park, which is one of the biggest archaeological finds in modern history, finding an old British king buried underneath a car park. He was exhumed and then reburied in 2015 in the actual Leicester Cathedral. Interestingly, as a little aside, my mother was born in Leicester. Her maiden name was Calvert, which, when you go to the etymology of that, is Calvert, calf herd, and her family line comes from herders of cows. The cattle themselves were used a lot here in Leicester because one of the other things that happened during the Industrial Revolution was that Leicester became very well known for shoemaking. And what do you need for shoes in those days? Lots of leather. So you can trace my mother's line back to that period of time. Railways connected Leicester to all parts of the UK, making trade very, very easy, and it was at that point in the Industrial Revolution where factories and terraced houses with red brick reshaped the skyline of Leicester. Also around the time of the Industrial Revolution, we had a lot of immigration coming in with Irish, Polish, Caribbean, later on Southeast Asian, making Leicester one of the most diverse and multicultural cities in the whole of the UK. Leicester didn't necessarily want that to happen. It happened anyway, and now there's sort of a relaxed vibe about it, and now they're proud of it. So, we can always learn how to move along and live with other people, not forgetting that the whole of England is an immigrant country. The Vikings, they're not from here. The Saxons, they're not from here. The Normans, they're not from here. Even the early settlers, when England had a land mass connected with Europe, walked over from other places to arrive here. So the whole of England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales is fully an immigrant country. So maybe that is useful for today's message with everything that is going on, legally, of course. The city has got a mind to work towards the future. It has a lot to do with green energy and with technology. It has 2 universities here, both of which look at a lot of genetics and space research. There is a space centre here. I didn't get to go to it myself, but it's got a big rocket in the foyer that you can have a drink in the cafe underneath it, which is pretty motivating. The theatre this week is something I want to focus on a little bit more than usual, as it is a theatre like no other that I've ever been to. So the Leicester Cove Theatre has a bit of a different story around it than the other theatres, and I've never been. I've auditioned loads of times for shows, not been successful in getting them, so I've never been here. But before I arrive, I'll tell the story and then I'll try and show it as I understand it. That it's a different type of theatre. An iron is usually, so a proscenium arch theatre is that thing you see with the stage, and you have the pros arch, and we have an iron that comes down that stops fire and segregates that if there's any issues. It's said here that the iron goes all the way around it, and then after the show that iron comes up and the audience can see backstage, and that for us to get to the dressing rooms, we have to go through the auditorium. Now, just in my little mind of how theatres work, this is very confusing indeed. So I'm very excited to see how this all pans out. It's where a lot of big shows come. Oh, and here it is. So, this is the Leicester Cove Theatre, and I'm about to attempt to find the stage door. If anyone's going to know how to get in, it is our company manager, Mel. It's right here. Do we know answers of how to get in?
You go through here, but then you have to walk all the way around to reception.
Okay.
But you can't go straight here.
Okay. Right. Oh. And there is Nicola Foster, the reason that we're able to do Calamity Jane. Hi there. Is this kind of stage door
Yeah,
today?
this is kind of stage door, yes. There you go, my love. I've also been told to tell you by Jodie that when it's time for warm-up, it's happening in rehearsal room 2, over in that corner over there.
Cheers, bro.
I just wanted to do a very short, small welcome from myself, Nikolai, and behalf of the rest of the team as well. Welcome to Leicester. We're very excited. It is sold out. There is barely a seat to be found, and I'm pretty certain if you go into any of the shops, there won't be any cowboy hats, there won't be any caps.
So we're very fortunate in our cast to have the one and only Molly. Look at that hair. If only we could see that in real life. Oh, hang on. Woo! They told us that the sides of the backstage lift up so that at the end of the show the audience can see what's going on in the workings of backstage, which I find absolutely fascinating and awesome. Before I was in the business, that is the sort of thing I would have rushed to go and see. It was officially opened in 2008 as part of the regeneration of the Cultural Quarter here in Leicester, and it was designed by Raphael Vinoli. I do have to wonder though if any actors were sort of questioned about what they might need in their job, because okay, it's an exciting place to be in, but when you're an actor who's you know, you're not always on stage, so sometimes you go back to your dressing room to wait so that you're not taking up space backstage. Here, they've put the actors all the way up the top, and then you have to go along, and then you have to get in the lift, which is possibly the slowest lift I've ever used in my life, which makes it very nerve-wracking when you're trying to get to stage on time. Go all the way down into the basement, all the way under, and then all the way back up to get backstage. It takes a literal 5 or 6 minutes to do that little journey, and that can be quite nerve-wracking when you're trying to get to a queue on time. You can also go across the concourse, like I said before, which makes you bump into the audience, which has its benefits and its negatives. Sometimes you don't want your belief suspended in that way. You just want to see the show and see how it happens. You don't necessarily want to see the actors rushing to and from a lift to get back to their dressing room. It kind of breaks the illusion somewhat. But having seen the side of the stage that does open up and down like that, I found that very, very interesting. And they have a wonderful restaurant which allows the actors to have a nice bit of a discount, and it's something that I think other theatres could benefit from having when you're constantly, if you're doing a 2-show day on an 8-show week, having to go away. Obviously the prices in the country are just going crazy at the minute. You're going to be spending upwards of £20-30 just to get a meal deal somewhere these days if you want to try and eat a bit healthier. Whereas this place actually do healthy meals, affordable for actors, and other theatres pay attention. So, Leicester, a city built by the Romans, reshaped by invaders, moved to the future by industry, and immortalised by a slightly misplaced skeleton. It really does have a vibe here in Leicester. At the moment, quite lawless, but who knows what will happen in the future. If you want to come, maybe just pass through and you'll have a great time. I personally did not enjoy getting pushed to part with my money under pressure, but hey, we've all got to live, right? We've all got to survive. So, I shall see you at the next one. If you're enjoying these videos, please consider liking and subscribing. The next place we're going to is Plymouth, which is more my vibe because we're down by the sea, where we went off and did lots of pirating and lots of investigating of the world, and well, that's just my nature. I love it. So I shall see you at the next one.